Hello. Name is Curricly Chris, and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to do something slightly different and talk about a trend in these newer books in these recent years, particularly with romance and young adult books.
Young adult books have many genres mixed in fantasy, thriller, contemporary, but what they all have in common is the age group the writing is meant for preteen to early teen, or just those getting into reading, like an appetizer before an entree, starting small before getting into anything more complicated. But that is typically meant for younger readers.
I have first gotten into reading with young adult fantasy, a few series filled with adventure with the subplot of romance. Primarily, the main characters will have a love interest, and there will be some flirting, glances, developing feelings, and most kissing and the indication of them going to bed together without going into much detail, if at all. To me, that is an appropriate introduction to romance for both young teens and adults just getting into reading. But what I have noticed, particularly with these new upcoming authors publishing in the young adult section, is the lines between what is and is not appropriate for young readers are being blurred quite a bit. The heavier detail in romance scenes is becoming concerning. I don't mean how many of these romance scenes are present, just with how they are being written out. And frankly, smut and young adult shouldn't go together, and it hasn't been before these recent years. I have read a few of these books, and it does make me question a few things. Why did the author think it was appropriate for young teens? How did the publishing firms? Are the firms skipping over, not caring, or just publishing anything submitted to them without looking over the writing at all? And are these authors just following the popular trends of online book spaces that are being shared by adult readers? Authors that have been publishing in the young adult for a decade or more are the ones who understand the limits. In fact, a favorite author of mine had just gone from young adult to adult fantasy because they understand what is and is not appropriate for these young readers. My main concern is how far the boundaries between young adult and adult romance will be pushed. The purpose of these books are to introduce more complex stories and writing. These young adult books by newer authors are blurring the lines between what is and is not appropriate for young readers, that I wonder if a new section will be added to bookstores in the coming years. Young yet old enough is what I would call it, and I would personally label that 16 or 17 and up. I keep talking about boundaries being pushed and what is and is not appropriate, and what I mean by that is how far these smut scenes are being taken. Comparing decade old young adult books to adult books with romance, the YA books always stop at certain points, while the adult books stop nowhere and get explicit. The YA books I am talking about go somewhere between that. Not detailing exactly what's happening, but yet you know exactly what's happening and what the author is vaguely describing. Not saying keywords that would make it an adult book, but yet putting in scenes that honestly should make it an adult book. Now, none of this is to say that I don't think romance should be in young adult books, but there definitely does need to be some discretion and primarily be a side plot. When the love story ties into the main plot or happens to be the main plot, I can enjoy it. However, that is not an excuse to add explicit scenes to these books that are meant to be read by middle schoolers. I am aware adults read YA books. I am one of them. A favorite author of mine happens to be a YA author. But adults should not be the target audience in this genre section. With how borderline explicit some of these romance scenes can get, you can tell that these authors wanted to add more detail. But if they did, the books would have to be considered adult and put into these other sections. And in each of these sections, they have their own superstars. Horror has Stephen King, thriller has Frida McFadden, fantasy has Sarah J. Maas and George Martin. I am well aware there are other pretty big named authors out there, but these are just primary examples of who tends to be on both the shelves and tables and are also fairly well known. But with these big names come a fair amount of competition to break through and become another big named author that some tend to aim for. And with YA having its own genres within itself, it can be easier to stand out in the smaller version of the genre these authors are writing in. My theory for why the details are being held back just enough in smut scenes to be considered young adult
is because these authors don't think they would get popular or recognized if they are put in the adult sections. I can understand the intimidation of the big names and needing the book to be interesting enough for the readers, but to dumb down your own writing to be big in a small section, in my opinion, is cowardly and says more about the author than anything else. To me, this type of author doesn't believe in themselves or their writing. I know fame is a wanted status that a good amount of people want these days, and with how I see some of these newer authors act on social media, it seems fame is the only thing they are after. Authors write and publish for many reasons: the love for storytelling, feeling the need to tell a story, writing is something that they've done growing up, sometimes it's a hobby that they turned into a career, or simply just for fame in the rare case. I don't think many authors care too much about being the most famous, especially with the recognition that not everybody reads for fun and a good handful of people don't even pick up a book every month. Reading seems like such a popular, widespread hobby because of social media, but the average everyday person doesn't read as much as some of these people online do. Heck, even I don't, and I question how anyone has enough free time to read as much as these people do. But that is another topic for another day. In summary, I am not against romance being in young adult books, but there definitely should be a limit. Now, I think I've said everything I need and have to say on this topic. If you have any opinions yourself or disagree with anything I said, feel free to leave a comment below. And now, even though I am frankly terrible at updating it, I will be leaving my Goodreads in the description for any recommendations or to see what I am possibly currently reading. Please consider leaving a like and subscribe to stick around for more. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.